Hi, Integrated Science. This is Miss Adderley. I'm going to talk about the studying atoms, and I want you guys to watch this today. So, this PowerPoint is going to be about the first individuals that came up with what our atom looks like. So, Democritus was more of an ancient scientist, and he believed that all matter consisted of extremely small particles that could not be divided. And he did coin the term atoms from atomos, or which means uncut or indivisible. He thought that different types of atoms had different properties. So, such as liquid atoms would be round and smooth, and solid atoms would be rough and prickly. Well, we know that isn't the case, but he was right about the fact that there are atoms inside different types of compounds. Aristotle, though, did not believe Democritus, and he thought there wasn't a limit to times matter could be divided. Aristotle had a lot of theories that were actually incorrect, but he was respected at the time, so a lot of people believed what he thought. John Dalton was an English school teacher, and he developed what we call atomic theory, and he also developed the law of definite proportions. So I'm going to start with the law of definite proportions. This states that compounds have a fixed composition, and he determined this by performing various experiments, and he found out that no matter the size of a sample, the ratio of the atoms within the sample was always the same. His atomic theory consists of 4 parts. So he came up with this theory. It took a lot of research and stuff to support it. And this is the summarized version of it. So atomic theory states that all elements are composed of atoms. It also says that all atoms of the same element have the same mass. Compounds contain atoms of more than one element, which we know that today, such as water, which is oxygen and hydrogen. And atoms in a compound always combine in the same way. So no matter how much water we have, it's always going to be H2O, which we have 2 hydrogen atoms to 1 oxygen atom. Now we're going to talk about atomic models. So Dalton thought that atoms were a solid sphere. This is not the current model that we use. We now know that there's a center part of the atom called the nucleus, surrounded by electron cloud, where the electrons are found. Now, the next scientist I want to talk about is Joseph John Thomson, who's commonly called J.J. Thomson. So he used electric current to study atoms. What electric current is, that is the flow of charged particles. Like charges repel and different charges are going to attract. So 2 positives are not going to attract to each other. They're going to repel each other. But a positive and a negative are going to attract. It's the same way that magnets work. It's the same concept. So he did an experiment with a device called the cathode ray tube, which is a sealed glass tube with a low pressure gas inside of it. It has a metal disc at each end. One of them is positive and one has a negative charge. Wires are connected to the tube. And when it turned on, the tube would actually glow because the particles within the gas would be charged. Now, he hypothesized that beams of charged particles cause the air to glow. And he made a conclusion after doing these experiments. Particles in the beam had a negative charge, and these particles came from inside the atom. This was the first evidence that atoms were made of different particles, and he's actually the individual that discovered the electron. I want to go back to the cathode ray, this picture right here. Anode and cathode. One is positive and the other one is negative. And what happened, how he determined that the particles were actually negative that he discovered, is because they would repel from the negative side of the cathode ray. So that's how he determined that electrons have a negative charge. So he came up with his own model. His atom was a neutral model, and it's called the plum pudding model. And this was basically a large mass of positive mass that had negative charges sprinkled throughout. And the reason it's called the plum pudding model is like the raisins and nuts and stuff that are within plum pudding is how they thought about this. So just a blob of positive charge with electrons sprinkled throughout. Ernest Rutherford is the next scientist I want to talk about. He discovered alpha particles, which are positively charged particles. And he had two scientists working underneath him that he had do experiments for him. So he asked two students to find out what happens to alpha particles as they pass through a gold foil. So they performed what's called the gold foil experiment. And they took some gold and they hammered it out, much like aluminum foil. And they shot the alpha particles through the gold foil. If you watch the video, like I told you to, this experiment is actually discussed within the video where they looked at the alpha particles and it seemed that all of them were just going right through the foil. And sometimes they would be deflected slightly until someone thought, okay, let's look at the front side of the foil and see what's happening. And they actually found that some of the alpha particles were bounced back the direction that they came from. So the mass and charge of the gold would be too small to deflect alpha particles and that they would travel in a straight line. That was what the hypothesis was. But actually, through the experiment, they found out that some of the particles were reflected back, which means that whatever they were hitting also was probably a positive charge. So this is how they discovered the nucleus. So J.J. Thomson discovered the existence of electrons, and Ernest Rutherford and his students that worked underneath him discovered the nucleus. And what the nucleus is a dense, positively charged mass located in the center of the atom. So that's the last slide for this introductory PowerPoint. So I want you guys to watch this video today. And then later this afternoon, I'm also going to have a video going over the atomic structure. So what the atom actually looks like will also be posted. And I want you to watch that today as well. If you have any questions, please let me know. Have a nice day. Bye.